can hear the airwaves. It's that WBOK, 12:30 a.m.
From the campus of Xavier University, WBOK Go and Equity Media Station.
I'm Bree Wood with 4 Things You Should Know with BIN News. Plans to sell mausoleum space in East Tampa, Florida are upsetting those preserving the legacy of a former black cemetery. The Italian club's offer affects the College Hill Cemetery where blacks and Cubans were buried. Hillsborough NAACP President Yvette Lewis calls it disrespectful. There's a push to expand the Texas Castle Doctrine, which allows people to use deadly force to defend their home or business. A bill connected to illegal immigration would take away a restriction that the attack needs to be happening at night when it's dark out. President Trump on Wednesday signs an order to roll back water pressure regulations enforced by former Presidents Biden and Obama that limit the flow from a shower head to a maximum of 2.5 gallons per minute. And Drake is making history 2 times in one day. The rapper has broken the Beatles record for the most cumulative weeks on the Billboard 200 and becomes the first artist to surpass 500 million RIAA certified units. Get BIN News on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
It's now time for Let's Elevate, the Arnie and Carey Show with Arnie Filko and Carey Grant.
This is Carey Grant. Arnie's out tonight. He's at the event that he talked about last night. This is the Let's Elevate show, the Arnie and Carey show. And he's at the Ninth Ward Stadium. They're having a community meeting for the Ninth Ward Stadium, which he is a board member of, the chairman of the board. The meeting starts at 7 p.m. It's at the Ninth Ward Community Center at 3250 Industry Street. This is a great project that's going on out there by Carver School, and they've raised $10 million, and they're hoping to break ground sometime in the fall for this new stadium. And I think this is something very exciting for the area, and I hope that everybody who can attend will attend the meeting because it's very important. We have a great guest tonight, somebody I'm very familiar with, but a great guest tonight. Who has something to offer about an event that she's going to have next week. It's Deborah Grant, my lovely bride. I have to say that for full disclosure. And she has a book that she's going to have at the Baldwin Bookstore. Going to have a book signing coming up, and we're here to talk about that. I want her to give, a lot of people know her, a lot of people have heard her on the show before, but I want her to give a little bit of her bio and a little bit more about what brings this book to fruition from your experiences.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me, Carey. I appreciate it. It's good to be on WBOK and good to be on the Arnie and Carey show. So a little bit about my background. I am a native New Orleanian. I grew up here. I went to Paul Lawrence Dunbar Elementary School, grew up in Holly Grove. Yay, go for the Grove.
Go for the Grove.
And in fact, Carey and I grew up a couple of blocks from each other, ironically. I went to Ursuline Academy. I went to Xavier University right here for a couple of years. Then I transferred and graduated from LSU with the bachelor's. And then I got my master's from Southern University in Baton Rouge. Go Jaguars. I was recruited while I was in grad school by GE. So I did an internship in between my 2 years of grad school with GE in the Washington, D.C. area. And they liked me. I liked them. So they offered me a job after I graduated. And I joined GE, and I spent 30 years there.
Can you speak a little bit about GE, because some of our younger listeners may not be as familiar with what was one of the greatest companies in America?
Sure. General Electric, or GE for short, was one of the largest global conglomerates ever. We, had made all kinds of stuff, things that you would have grown up with, certainly in our generation, appliances, your refrigerator, your stove, your toaster, all kinds of things like that, your washing machine. You had light bulbs, so all of your lamps, all your different light bulbs that you had were things that GE made. Just all kinds of products. And so it was a global conglomerate. It gave me a great opportunity over a 30-year span. I relocated 8 times in the 30 years. So I really had a chance to have a very broad background and to be involved in and exposure to a lot of different
And
things.
speak to the program. You said that you were an intern. You started from that situation at Southern University. Speak about what those programs were about and how valuable they were and are to the corporate structure.
Yeah, so I was working on my master's at Southern, master's in public administration,
Mhm.
and GE came to Baton Rouge to recruit specifically diversity. They were looking for African American students, which would make sense to go to an HBCU.
Right.
The particular program I joined, which was the Human Resources Leadership Program, required a master's degree. So at the time, there were only a couple of HBCUs who offered a master's degree, and
Right.
Southern in Baton Rouge was one of them. So that's why they came, and I had a chance to intern, to kind of prove myself, to see if it was a good fit for me and a good fit for them, and it was. So they offered me a permanent position.
So it was so. What I'm driving at with that is because we talk a lot about the issues that are happening today, but this is a classic example of what a diversity program is. But it's based on your qualifications, as we all know. It's not the things that have been turned out and turned around about what those
Oh,
titles
absolutely,
mean. Yeah,
absolutely. I was the top student in the program.
yeah,
They interviewed me and maybe the next four after me, and
right,
I think they offered spots to a couple of us.
yeah,
But the real thing was, it's about fishing where the fish are. So if you
yes,
want diversity, if you want whatever, go to where the diversity is. So go to an HBCU because that's where the African American students are.
right.
They knew what their qualifications were: advanced degree, top quartile of the class. So that's what they asked for, and that's who they sent me and others to interview.
And this was at a time when the corporation realized that they could find talent everywhere, and they were looking for talent everywhere. They were looking for talent. They were about that situation and building on their company's strengths. So
Absolutely.
it wasn't about we just need to have some black people in the
No,
company,
absolutely,
that type of thing.
absolutely. And again, it's always, about having somebody in the room where it happened, right? So there
Right.
was an African American executive, Wiley Harris. He's deceased now. He was originally from Lynchburg, Virginia, who was in the room. And he
Right.
said to the others in the room, well, if we're really serious about bringing in top-notch African American talent, we need to go to an HBCU. And that's exactly what they did.
And then from there, just go deeper into your career because it has a lot to do with what this book is all about.
Sure. So I joined the company on a training program, which meant I did rotational assignments every 8 months. So I did my first assignment in Washington, D.C. I worked in compensation. I was an HR person, so I worked in compensation. I did my second assignment in Cincinnati, Ohio, at our aviation business. So we built aircraft engines. So the engine that flies planes, still have that business. I worked in union relations there. So I had an opportunity
Yeah.
to work with the unions and around union relations, union avoidance, et cetera. And then the third opportunity, I went back to the Washington, D.C. area and worked in a human resources job. So that gave me a good exposure to the company.
Right.
And then from there, I just did successively larger jobs, relocating and living everywhere. I lived in Atlanta, Georgia for a while. I lived in Raleigh, North Carolina. And then I subsequently lived in Stamford, Connecticut for many years.
And from a graduate program at a young age, you left New Orleans to experience all of this from and grow up within the company and within your own life. So it really formulated a good point of view for you to see all different aspects of a huge multinational company. I mean, this is a huge
Oh
company.
yeah,
at
we
this
had
time.
at our height we had over 300,000 employees and we operated in over 100 countries.
Right.
So it gave me an opportunity to really see leadership. My whole
Yes.
thing is about effective leadership and we'll get into that with the book. But I had a chance to see good leaders, bad leaders, emerging leaders, retiring leaders, kind of seeing it from every angle. So that gives me a real longitudinal perspective on what leadership should look like.
Yeah, and we're going to get to the book in a little while, but I want you to go on with what you learned and what capabilities the company taught you, which is what people don't understand about some of these issues that are attacking these types of programs, is that it helps to teach and develop people of all different kinds of races and sexes how to be leaders, how to run things, how to, and that's why a lot of people come out of these corporations and become entrepreneurs, become, mentors to people and that type of thing. Yeah.
Well, the company provided so much training and development, and I tried to take advantage of every opportunity that came across.
Right.
Everything from running a business, financial skills, how to amass a staffing plan. If you've got to hire a lot of people because you're growing.
Right.
We went and benchmarked some of the organizations in Europe. I mean, I went across Europe. I was in Europe for a month.
Yeah.
They brought, I don't know, maybe 30 of us, 35 of us in a course. We were in Europe. We were in like 3 or 4 different countries. We were in Milan, in Italy. We were in Paris. We were in London, looking at other companies to kind of
Right,
benchmark and
right.
see on a particular topic.
And see how they
do it.
in a
Yeah.
different place.
That particular topic, I can remember, this was a long time ago, was back office consolidation. How do you run the back office? How do you run like the operations of a business to be more efficient?
Right.
So our goal was to go out and in that class, this particular class, was to look at other companies, other organizations to see what they do, and then to come back and synthesize and make a recommendation to our management on what our company should do. And so those courses were offered, throughout the year,
Yeah.
but it gave you great exposure to what others were doing, not to be insular, like, well, we're doing it the best, well, we're doing it okay. Let's
Right.
see if somebody's doing it better, and what can we learn from that? It's always about what can we learn from others.
Right. So along the way, you're picking up all these skills, and you're also thinking about what your future will be, what you will do after your career, along the way, because you're thinking forward about what you want to become and where you want to end up in this company. So talk a little bit about your rise in the company, so to speak.
Well, I think for me, moving up in the company, and I went, as you know, all the way up to the top, it wasn't necessarily this destination or that destination. It was always about amassing skills and experiences
Right.
that were relevant and that would help me advance.
Yes.
So I was never afraid to take the hard job, the tough job, the job that nobody wanted, because I knew I could learn. And I
Yeah.
knew if I could do it well, then you kind of stand out. If you go do the job everybody else is doing, you're just like
Right.
everybody else.
Right.
Or if you go to the location where everybody else is. I mean, I went, like I said, I relocated 8 times in the
Yeah.
course of my career, and most of that was in the first 15 years. So literally every 2 years, I was physically picking up and moving, but it gave me an opportunity to see different industries, to see different business units, to see different business models.
Yeah.
And I think exposure to all of that is what really helps you have perspective. At this point in my life, I think I have great perspective.
Right.
So when I see business cycles come and go, I'm not like freaked out by them, because I'm
Right.
kind of like, okay,
Yes.
here's where we are. Now what can we do to move through that and move to the next level?
And you've gone through your whole career, and as you said, I mean, and just explain to people what you mean by you reached the top of the heap, because some people are new to listening and might not know what you mean by that.
So GE, as I mentioned, and I hate to talk about myself in this way, but since you asked, I will. GE at the time was 300,000 employees operating in over 100 countries.
Right.
We were, just like any organization, you had different levels in the hierarchy, like in the government, it's level 1, level 2, level 3, whatever
Right.
it is. So we had, of the 300,000, we had 185 corporate officers. So these were officers of the company appointed by the board of directors and the chairman of the company.
Yeah.
I was the first Black female appointed a corporate officer. So I was in the top 185 people in a company of 300,000 globally. So, it was, I was a unicorn. It was just
Right.
me. It was
Right.
me and only me for a
Right.
while. And then, I did everything I could do to pull a few sisters in as well, who you've met, who are
Yes,
close
absolutely.
friends. But, so you have to learn how to maneuver. You have to learn how to play the game. And that's what the book is about, trying to impart some insight, some wisdom, just some tidbits, some nuggets on how do you play the game to advance.
And why I wanted you to do that is to do the throughput line of the career, because it shows that, and this is important for people to understand, for their families and listeners and their friends or whatever, is sometimes all the smallest opportunity can grow into a large thing.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
you have to take those opportunities. You talk about it all the time about being willing to move away from home when
Yes.
you're young. When
Yes.
you're young, you have to be able to say,
Yes.
I'll
Yes.
take that leap. You know, sometimes families don't want you to
Yes,
go or
yes.
whatever, but you
I
have to be able
cannot
to take
tell
that
you
leap.
how many times I personally brought recruiting teams to Louisiana, to Southern, which is where I graduated from, who to recruit students, and it was like, well, do y'all have anything here, or I don't know if I want
Yeah,
to go, and that kind of thing. And it's great. It's great. Look, no one loves home more than me. I love New
right,
Orleans. I came back here after 30 years. I love New Orleans. Sometimes it's okay to go away and see something else
yeah,
and get other training and look at where the opportunity is. Now, granted, there's one school of thought that says we should create more opportunities here, and we
we
should.
should.
But
Right,
as you know, both things can be true. There can be opportunities here, and there can be opportunities in other
right.
places. Because I think the cross fertilization is really what makes the city great, what makes individuals great.
Well, one thing I want you to speak about is one issue that you were particularly involved in that brought business to New Orleans. But as a local person, that opportunity doesn't present itself if we don't have people out there in these companies in these different places to speak up for home. It's it's very difficult for somebody who's working out of an office in New York to say Louisiana, New Orleans might be a possibility. There's nobody around who can advocate for it.
Yeah, no, no,
Yeah.
no. I mean, it's this is probably now going back, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, 8, 9, 10 years ago. Former mayor at the time, Mitch Landrieu, called me up. I was in Connecticut and said, "Hey, we understand, that GE is looking to bring open a tech center, like a tech
Right.
center,
Yeah.
a couple of hundred jobs.
Yeah.
Would New Orleans be on the radar?" And I said, "Well, I'm not really involved in that, but I'm happy to help if you like." And so he said, "Well, could we at least get a meeting with your chairman? The chairman of the company. Could you get a meeting?" I said, "Yeah, yes." So I called him. I called the chairman. I said, "Look, I'd love for you to meet the mayor of New Orleans. I've known him a long time. Um, you know, this is sort of post Katrina, so
Yeah.
obviously everybody in the world was familiar with that. Trying to get more economic growth here. Would you take a meeting?" And he said, "Absolutely."
Yeah.
So Mitch and I and Amy Quirk, who was his economic development person at the time, and the chairman of GE, Jeff Immelt, we met in New York for a couple of hours. And if you know anything about Mitch, Mitch is the consummate sales guy. He was
Yeah.
selling and selling, and they went through a process, and New Orleans was awarded 200 jobs. So we opened 200 high-paying jobs here, which were here for, I don't know, 7, 8, 9 years. I think some things have moved around and developed, and some things were
Because the
sold by
company's
then.
changed.
Yeah,
not,
the
not
company's
so much
changed.
because of the city
Yeah,
or
but
anything
but
like
we saw in New Orleans a place to plant a flag. And the other part of it was the knowledge that if a company like GE would plant a flag, others would too.
that. Yeah.
And that's what was really important to me as a New Orleanian, to know that if we plant a flag here as GE in a post-Katrina city, that others would come to. And that's what happened. So
Right.
I was very honored and humbled to be a part of that. And it'll always be special to me.
So just before we take a short break, I just want you to go into your post GE career, and then we'll go into the book and what's going on with that.
Well, post GE, I retired and moved back to New Orleans, like many New Orleanians do. I planned to become a lady who lunched, and people started asking me to do stuff, and I said, well, okay, sure. Would you come and speak here? Would you come and coach somebody? And would you kind of help navigate this strategy? And so I started taking on some things here and there, and I launched my company, Corporate Playbook, and I'll share after the break why it's called Corporate Playbook, because that ties into the reason for the book.
Yeah. I think we'll take a short break now, and we'll be right back.
Trying to grow your business or increase traffic to your location? We can help. WBOK 1230 AM has a number of solutions that will meet your individual needs. Give one of our consultants a call today at 504-582-9420 or email us at info@wbok1230.com. And remember, an investment with WBOK is an investment in our community. Call today.
This is Monica Pierre along with Sally Ann Roberts Daybone, co-host of Your Power is On. Tune in Sunday mornings
from 7 to 8 a.m. for music that feeds the spirit. Get your Sunday on.
Right here on WBOK 1230 AM and WBOK1230.com, the station you listen to
All day long.
On the next edition of The Way Forward, mental training specialist Dejanay Green will join me to discuss recognizing trauma in our lives and figuring out how to bounce back. Join me on The Way Forward this weekend on WBOK 1230 AM or streaming live at WBOK1230.com and the Play Old app. It's The Way Forward with Eddie Francis, Saturday at 3 p.m. on WBOK. What New Orleans is talking about.
WBOK online at WBOK1230.com.
The Arnie and Carey Show with Arnie Philco and Carey Grant.
And we are back. This is the Arnie and Carey Show. I'm talking to my guest tonight, Deborah Grant, who has a book that's coming out, and that's very, very much a good guide to dealing with leadership and the issues of leadership, the issues of how to navigate organizations and to be a great leader. And we're going to go into that portion of our program now about there's going to be an event that's going to be at Baldwin Books on April 19th, 11 a.m. to 1. And it's going to be a book brunch that's going to be moderated by Gina Swanson, and Deborah's going to talk about the book in the event as well. I want to invite anyone who wants to call in about anything, including this subject, to call 504-582-9422. We're more than willing to answer any questions or talk about any subject matter you might want to talk about. Now, let's get into the actual book, because, like you said, you created a company called Corporate Playbook. Just give a little bio of the company and what you've been doing with that and how that relates to this guide that you're putting together.
Sure. So the company I launched after I retired from GE was called Corporate Playbook. And I thought about titles. People gave me all kind of suggestions, but I called it Corporate Playbook because I truly believe, based on all of my years of experience and exposure, that advancing one's career, being successful, does have a playbook to it, right? It's just like being on a team, a football team, a baseball team. There is a playbook. There are a series of moves. There are a series of things you can do, things you cannot do, things you can say, how you show up that strategically help you advance. And so that's why I called it Corporate Playbook, because I really do believe that.
Yeah. And we talk about this all the time, and I'm going back to the beginning with you just for a second. But we talk about this all the time about opportunities. And what people have to understand is all races, creeds, colors, whatever, have to understand is you have to take the opportunity, but don't be afraid of the opportunity at the lowest level, at the highest level, whatever, a new job or like you said, a promotion or something like that. Take those opportunities and use some of these guidelines to help you navigate those things and overcome your fears. I think a lot of times people don't venture out into that other thing that might be standing right in front of you, because the safest thing to do is to stay where you're comfortable or whatever.
And many people do that, sadly.
Yeah.
Many people that I've worked with over the years, and even some who I'm coaching now, you know they've got it, right? You know they've got the intellect, you know they've got the insight, but there's fear. There's like, well, what if I'm not perfect? And so none of us are perfect, but there are ways, careers don't happen haphazardly. It's not like something just falls out of the sky and you say, oh, well, I'm going to get promoted here, I'm going to get promoted there. There are strategies to put yourself in position to be promoted. And that was part of the impetus for the book, is to how do I share some of the things that people can think about? How do I move? Think of it as a chessboard. What move do I make that's going to set me up to really advance and win in the long run?
And some of the other things, there's a lot of turmoil going on right now in companies and government and everything in people's lives. And these types of things are, maybe it's not time to venture out for something or whatever, but there's always something that can help you to maintain in tough times. You talked about seeing business cycles over the years. We both worked for long-term periods and have seen lots of crises in different worlds, in two very different worlds of government and business. And yet there's some things that persevere through those crises. So even those times these kind of guidelines can help somebody to to make their way through what's a hard to navigate time, but it will also give you something to anchor yourself in. And I think that's a big part of what we're talking about.
And I don't know, to be honest with you, if I would go as hard as even saying guidelines. I would just say some insights, some perspective, some suggestions. Listen, there, you could fill this room with tips and suggestions on how to navigate. These are just some that I've seen and that I know work and that I've used myself.
Right.
And so so that's why I just thought, it's I mean, I'll share. I am truly the accidental author. No, I mean that, because there are a lot of people who think about writing a book. They see themselves, I really want to write a book. It's a desire, it's a goal, they get at it. It was not really the thing that I saw myself doing or really necessarily signed up to do.
Right.
The irony for me is, as I would go on various speaking engagements, and of course the name of my company is Corporate Playbook, people would say at a conference, oh, and we'll buy the book. We'll buy the playbook.
Where's the playbook?
And I'm like, well, the playbook's in my head. So at some point I said, well, you know what? I need to actually put some of this on paper. So to talk about it a little bit, what I did was I have a lot of video footage of myself speaking in all kinds of places around the world over many years. So I started compiling all of that because I have daughters who are in their late 20s, and they're in that very much in the TikTok space. And I said,
Video is really where it is. That's really where it's at now. It's really about
short, bite size, watching reels. It's not necessarily, reading volumes and volumes and volumes of text.
Right.
So if I were being true to myself, I said, I've got to be authentic and have some text, but also some video. Yeah. So the book is short. It's not like an arduous book, but every chapter gives you three things. It gives you some text, so some narrative around my insights on that particular chapter.
Right.
Then it gives you a video. So there's a QR code in the hard copy of the book. If you download the book to your Kindle or whatever, there's a link to a video, which is a couple of minutes. It's a little longer than a TikTok video, but it's not like you're going to a lecture. But it's a couple of minute video, 2 minutes maybe, that gives you more illustration of the topic. And then at the end of every chapter, there's a couple of suggestions called ways to play, like a couple of things you can do specifically to think about, to sort of enact in your own life and your own organization what the chapter was about.
And the way you, as you said, you were the accidental author. You weren't trying to write a book, but there was a lot of book-like material within what you were talking about. So how did you come up with a structure of the book? Like if everybody has 1,000 ideas, but how did you start with the first idea and say, this is the last piece I want to talk about in this volume?
Yeah, I think for me, it was, first of all, just laying all the pieces out, which was a considerable amount of pieces. What did I think was most impactful?
Right.
What are the lessons that are really impactful and universal? So my book is called Corporate Playbook because my world was corporate, but the lessons here could be in a nonprofit world. It could be in the education space. It really is just around advancing your career in whatever space you're in. And then as you take on a leadership role, how do you lead effectively?
Right.
So I took the things that I thought resonated across multiple spaces versus very specific to one space. That was one way I looked at the structure. And then just trying to give, as I kind of talked to people and socialize this a bit, it was what seemed to resonate more. And then when I thought about even my speaking engagements, where did I get most engagement from the audience? So I tried to whittle it down to, probably 8 or 10 chapters. The chapters are a few pages with the video. But what would be short, piffy, you could say, yeah, I got it. Okay, I got it.
Right.
These are the 3 things I should think about implementing right away.
So as you just said, now go back a little bit to your actual business that you're in now, your consulting business. Just talk a little bit about the aspects of your consulting business in which you impart to people in speaking engagements and coaching and the like.
Yeah, so a couple of things. My business does business strategy. So strategy around leadership. So it's not necessarily how you make money, but how do you have the right leaders? How do you ensure you've got the right people in the right chairs, kind of thing. Leadership development. And I do executive coaching. So I coach people who are C-suite, so CEOs. You could be a nonprofit CEO. You could be right below the CEO,
Right.
not entry level per se. But how can you be more effective? How can you make sure you have the right team and that your team is effective? So I help coach people around that. How do you go into a new job? I have
Yeah.
several people I'm coaching now who just got promoted or they just got hired. How do you show up? What's the best way for you
Right.
to show up? How do you understand who else is in the room with you and decipher who can I trust, who can I not trust? How should I align myself? And then and so in that regard, it's a pretty broad portfolio of things
Yeah.
that I do. And then I do a lot of public speaking. So I will be asked to speak at a conference. I just spoke last week for the Chamber of the New Orleans Chamber of Commerce's Women's Conference, Power Up. I was on a panel for Elevate,
Yeah.
where we talked to, I don't know, the room was packed with, I don't know, maybe 150, 175 women, professional women, just
Yeah.
talking about having your voice heard. How do you ensure that your voice is heard? So the book is meant to be a bit of a companion, if you will. It's very much a standalone, but it also is something I plan to use as I go on speaking engagements as something that's a takeaway that you can say, yeah, she kind of talked about this, but here's
Right.
something now I can kind of sink my teeth into and take back with me.
And the thing about it that I find interesting is some people would hear this and say, maybe this is like something that you're doing for people who are on big jobs at national companies or whatever, but this has a local scale as well. I mean, you deal with coaching and the like for people of all ilks. I mean, this is not about just corporation people, like you
Yes.
said, nonprofits. We have a lot of people here who run charters and that type of thing who are involved in needing that kind of help, and you are actually dealing with people on all different levels and all
Yes,
different
yeah,
organizations.
I have clients all around the world, to include New Orleans. Here's one thing that I believe at my soul: leadership is leadership is leadership. Period.
Right.
If you are an effective leader, you can be an effective leader at church. You can be
Right.
at the PTA, whatever it's called now, PTO. You can be, you can be in the class, wherever. Leadership is leadership. So if you learn and master the techniques of being an effective leader and how to navigate
Right.
an environment, you can use that in any room, in any space that you're in.
And one thing that I want to ask you, because I've taken lots of leadership courses over the years too, but one thing that was always interesting to me was what leaders are not. And I think you make it very clear that leaders have certain qualities or use certain qualities to be effective. And there's a lot of things that I think people kind of get into a kind of an anecdotal leadership thing where they think this is what a leader really does or that type of thing. And I think you're very clear about you need to really do some other things there, because it's kind of, there's this picture of what a leader is. It's just somebody who's, standing in front of the room, browbeating people or whatever. And I think that that's very crucial for people to understand what's really effective and not just the anecdotal leadership
Well,
idea.
a couple of things on that. First of all, just because you take on a leadership role doesn't make you a leader.
Right.
There's lots of people who are sitting in a chair, but they're not necessarily an effective leader.
Right.
The other thing I believe is you manage stuff, you lead people.
Yeah.
Okay, you
Yeah.
manage stuff, you lead people. So you manage a budget, you manage things. You are your heads down. We have this number of this, that number of that. If you're a leader, you are inspiring people.
Right.
That truly is what a leader is. You have to have a vision. You have to think about how do you mobilize people to enact, to achieve that vision. How do
Right.
you have a plan? So that's what a leader does. And again, people confuse, and I think where I see the most confusion is managing. People manage stuff. You manage a
Right.
store. You manage the
Right.
inventory in a store, but you have to inspire people to be their best self, to bring their best self to the table, to enact toward a vision that you help to set and
And
create.
this is sort of an aside, but this program we talk a lot about politics and those type of things. And what you're describing is what a great political leader is, and what people should be looking for in their leaders is, you have to know how to manage things and you have to know how to do certain things. But a lot of things are about inspiring people, making people follow you, making people, believe in your vision, and your vision has to be clear. You have to have a defined goal. You have to, And I think a lot of those things are in this upcoming election, things that we always say on this program. We want people to ask people in forums about that, and the very idea of who's going to lead the city, who's going to lead, whatever aspects of the city, your councilmanic district or whatever. You should be looking for certain qualities in people always in any environment, but particularly since we always talk about politics in local politics, you should be looking for some of those qualities or some idea that these people understand that that's what we need.
Yeah, I mean, you have to have a certain level in whatever field, discipline you're in, be it in political and government, whatever. You have to have some level of subject matter expertise. You can't
Right.
just come in with nothing.
Exactly.
But I'm not of the belief, and I'll tell you why in a minute. I'm not of the belief you have to be a subject matter expert at everything.
Right.
Because I worked in a company that was in multiple industries, and we moved people around for that reason, so that you could learn
Yeah.
different industries, but the common thread was you could lead. So the common thread is, can you set a vision for whatever it is, whatever discipline or area, be it government, be it politics that you're in. But you really need to ask yourselves, would I follow this person? Because if the person says they're leading and no one's following them,
Right,
they're not leading.
leading.
They're
Right.
just standing up.
Right.
They're just standing up by
Yeah.
themselves.
Yeah.
So
So what I want to say is, and you're making a great point, but if you're a young person, particularly, we're older, but if you're a young person and you
speak for yourself. We're older.
Well,
Speak for yourself.
Yes, I'm wrong about that. I'm much older than you, but if you want to be in a leadership role, you've made a great point about being a leader. But if you want to take something that should be a leadership role in your church, in your community organization, whatever, at Nord Park, there's certain things that you really have to have in this book, and your philosophy is how you become that person that you really are trying to be.
Yeah.
Don't just aspire for a position because it's a position and you're going to have a title.
Sure. Well, you need to practice leadership. Leadership can be practiced. It doesn't just fall out of the sky.
Yeah.
And I'll give you the perfect example. Years ago, I would counsel women, let's say women who had gone out of the workforce, whatever, to have children or whatever.
Right.
Let's say they were out of the workforce for a couple of years. And they say, well, I don't know if I can get back in or what I can do or whatever. And I'm like, okay, what do you do? And I talked to them, what do you do in your life? Well, I chaired the fundraiser for the school.
Right.
Okay, that's leadership.
Yeah.
So when you, on your resume, I want you to write down exactly what you did for that fundraiser. Well, our goal was X and we raised Y. So you exceeded your fundraising goal.
Right.
You organized committees. You had a location committee. You had an entertainment committee. Whatever you had, I want you to talk about that.
Yeah.
Because that's where you were exhibiting leadership. And I'd have people say, "Oh, I never thought about that." I'm like, "Yeah." And
Yeah.
those skills are transferable. That's the thing. A lot of us don't realize those skills are very transferable.
I think sometimes people don't realize, and I even did this when I was working at the city, is sometimes I would do what I call the self-audit, where I would write down all of the things I participated in or did and see, what were my strengths, what were my weaknesses, what did I really like to do, that type of thing. And I think people should sometimes just take a piece of paper and kind of self-audit yourself. And I know that's a good thing for you to start from before you even try to do anything, to say, I have these skills. I didn't even realize I had these
Yes,
skills.
and talk to people. Talk to people. One thing I always tell people, if you aspire to a job, find somebody who's in that job now and just ask them, hey, would you spend, 30 minutes with me? No more than an hour, because anybody will give you, if they're decent, they'll give you 30 minutes, they'll give you 45 minutes to talk about what they do, right? They don't have to prepare much to talk about what they do.
Right.
And if you go in, and again, this is about how you show up. You show up very prepared. I'd love to just understand, Carey, a little bit more about what you do at the city with the budget, et cetera.
Right.
Just, and just ask some questions, and people will do that. That
Yes.
gives you information. That gives you insight. It also tells that person that you're interested. So if your name comes up somewhere along the line, I'll say, oh, yeah, I met her. She was pretty good.
Yeah.
We should look at her for something else.
Yeah, as you and I talk about a lot about fear and opportunity, because those are two things that are either obstacles or pluses in your growth. And I think that a lot of people have fear because they almost don't know what they have. And like you said, sometimes you can see it through the lens of someone else, because even talking to somebody about something you may aspire to or whatever within the company you're in or within any job or a job you aspire to, you can literally go to a bank. I know this to be true. You can go to a bank and say, I would like to talk to one of your executives about being a loan officer, and you don't even have to have money in the bank. You can just ask.
Yes.
And people are always interested in talking about themselves as well. So
Yes.
that's the thing that really will help you. And I think a lot of people don't understand that is a real thing, that you can really do that, and you can practice, as you said, leadership practice, becoming what you want to become. And that's sort of like what you're saying about your book, is to give people tools to use to become better at what they do, to learn how to do what they want to do.
Yeah, a few things we talk about are like leading with empathy. How do you
Yeah.
lead with empathy? I mean, that's one right now. I don't want to give away the whole book, but one right now
Yeah.
that I'll talk about because of the times we're in. People really need empathy right now because we're going through very turbulent, stock market, tariffs in, tariffs out,
Yes.
everything is in flux.
Right.
And you got to realize that when people show up at work, they're going through a lot of stress.
Right.
On the job and
Right.
off the job. Am I going to
Yeah.
have the job? Am I not going to have the job?
Yes.
Is my spouse going to have the job or not have the job? It's stress.
Yeah.
And so a little empathy, a little bit more listening, like they say less, a
Right.
little bit saying less and listening can go a long way. And really being concerned about people's well-being. Don't
Yeah.
just show up and say, okay, well, we got to get this done today. You're not working with widgets or robots. You're working with people who have real daily lives.
And as you said, and today, I mean, we talk about this on the show all the time. I mean, everybody who knows us knows that Arnie and I talk about this all the time. Most of our guests, everybody is experiencing stresses today that they never experienced in some instances, about where the next dollar's coming from, where the money that took care of grandmother is coming from, that type of thing. Things that maybe you weren't stressed out about before. And now like you said, you're going into a space to deal with things. And as a good leader, you have to realize there's a lot going on in the world, and maybe dig into your staff or whatever about what's going on in the world, because everybody's having issues.
Yes.
I mean, there's almost no one who's not being touched by some of these things.
And from an empathetic standpoint, thank people for their contributions.
Yeah.
I cannot tell you how many times, if I had a leader, and I tried to always do this with my staff, almost every Friday, I would walk around Friday afternoon and say, hey, thanks for this week. Appreciate it. I know it was a grind, but just a little gratitude to let people know I see you. I hear you. I know you. I know who you are.
Right.
Asking about, hey, how was your weekend? That kind of thing. We're not just here just to produce something. We are humans. We are connected. And I think that empathetic screen, if you will, from a leadership standpoint, empathetic lens is huge.
And from that point of view, I mean, I agree with you. I think that, we had, in the environment I was in, we had a very strenuous job, lots of deadlines, lots of legal deadlines that were charter driven, that type of thing. So we had to get things done by a certain point. So we asked a lot of our employees. But what I found was I learned a lot about our employees as well. And I knew what their family issues were, with their, where I could work them. Some people had kids who had to leave earlier, that type of thing. I'm just generalizing it, but it's what you said, but really digging in, especially now, because people are really struggling with a lot of things.
Well, the interesting thing is, the whole assault on DEI right now, I mean, the reality of what you just described is being a leader with the lens of diversity. Because not every employee, every colleague has the same thing, same issues. And as a good manager, good leader, really, you want to tap into what does this person need to be effective, which may be very different than what the other person needs to be effective. Your goal is to make everybody effective as a good leader. Your goal is to inspire everybody.
And even when you don't have some of these outside stresses or whatever, what motivates people to work, and what kind of workers they are? What I found was, I'm a night owl, as you know, and I could work later than most people could, and some people were morning people, so we let them come in the morning. So it was just learning how people work and learn what they reacted to, and they appreciated that.
And I worked very much, as you know, in a global company. So think about this from a global cultural standpoint. We had some colleagues who really didn't want the spotlight on them. They were okay if you just went in there and said, hey, thank you, and they were good. Others really wanted the award. They wanted the applause. They wanted the shining and everything. So, it's different. It's culturally different and being culturally competent and aware.
So we're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to talk directly about the event that you're going to have next week and about the corporate playbook itself. We'll be right back in a moment.
Norman Robinson is back.
Can you hear me now?
And he's taking no prisoners.
Can you hear me now?
Each weekday, Norman Robinson brings you commentary with Off the Top.
The incident was shocking, disturbing, disgusting, disappointing, and sad.
Each weekday, Off the Top with Norman Robinson is heard exclusively right here.
It's Off the Top with Norman Robinson on WBOK 1230 AM.
Attention, WBOK listeners. Are you a fan of the station and want to show your support and style? Well, we've got some exciting news for you. Introducing the official WBOK merchandise, the perfect way to wear your love for the station. Whether you're a longtime listener or a new fan, we've got something for everyone. Head to WBOK1230.com now and grab your WBOK gear before it's gone. When you buy WBOK merch, you're not just getting quality items, you're supporting the station you love.
Hi, I'm Leo Jackson, host of Sunday Gospel here every Sunday morning, 5 a.m. to 7 p.m. and 12 o'clock till 2 p.m. You don't want to miss this move of God. It happens only on WBOK. You listen to all day long.
New Orleans, are you ready? A fresh voice in the city is here, bringing you the beats, the culture, and the stories that matter. From local music and food to real talk on what's happening in the streets, we've got you covered. Stay tapped in. Follow us on all platforms at WBOK 1230 for the latest updates and exclusive content. Your city, your culture, your news. Don't just hear about it, be about it. Follow us at WBOK 1230 now.
When you talk, we listen. WBOK.
The Arnie and Carey Show with Arnie Philco and Carey Grant.
This is the Arnie and Carey Show. We are back. If you want to call in, it's 504-582-9422. Have a great guest tonight, Deborah Grant, with Corporate Playbook, her company. And we're talking about an event that's going to happen in the next few days. It's called Books and Brunch. It's going to be at Baldwin and Company on Elysian Fields, 1030 Elysian Fields, on April 19th from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Tickets are on Eventbrite, and we're going to get into the event itself and what the Corporate Playbook is.
So, yeah, I'm really excited. The book was published a couple of weeks ago.
Yes.
And very important to me to do my first event at a Black-owned bookstore.
Right.
And so talk to DJ.
One of the great bookstores in the whole city.
Absolutely. If you've never been to Baldwin, you should go there. It's spectacular. It's a good vibe. It's a good feel. And they have fantastic events all the time. So I really wanted to be in that space.
And they have great Black literature that is hard to find at other places, which I really appreciate.
That is very true. Yeah. That is very true. So we decided to do the first live event there.
Yeah.
It will be on Saturday, April 19th, the day before Easter. It is from 11 to 1. It'll be Books and Brunch. And so Gina Swanson from WDSU will do an interview similar to this with me, but we're going to get a lot more into the book.
Yeah.
Tickets are available on Eventbrite, and a copy of the book is included with the ticket price.
Right.
And it's a full brunch, full service brunch, bubbly. So basically we want to have a conversation. We're going to talk about leadership. We'll talk about some of the tips in the book, and then whatever else the crowd wants to talk about.
Sure.
I will sign copies of the book, and then you can stay for the community, because it's always good. And it's important to me that we really be in community around this.
Yeah. And as you said, we've been to several events there, and we've been independently and together. And Baldwin always brings great authors to the table, and they stay and they talk to the people, so you can really interact with people and find out some things that are adjunct to the book as well. So I think they give great events, and that's a great forum for them to have interactions. We've seen Stephen A. Smith there and different people, and you know, really
Tamika Mallory, lots
really
of people.
Great interactive setup, and they really cater to the people. I mean, they give great events at Baldwin.
Absolutely. I'm excited to be there. I'm honored to have them host me in this conversation. It is open to men and women. It is open to, any stage of your career. And we just want to have a conversation around being an effective leader and navigating. The title of the book is The Corporate Playbook: While Others Play Checkers, Play Three-Dimensional Chess.
Right.
And I'm going to say that again. While others play checkers, play three-dimensional chess. Because, again, career navigation should not be haphazard.
Right.
Just like playing chess has a lot of strategy to it. It's a lot of, you're not just thinking one move. Checkers is kind of one move.
Yeah.
Chess, you've got to think like two moves out,
ahead,
and
right.
you've got to think about what your opponent is doing as well. So there's
Right.
a lot of, if I do this, the other person's going to do that. And that's how I think you really have to think about your career and what you're doing if you really want to be successful, if you really want to climb the ladder in whatever field you're in.
And like a wise man once said very recently, there are no grandmasters in checkers, but there are in chess.
Yes.
So it's an international, heavily intellectual sport. So that's a great quote to put out there.
Tagline,
Yeah,
yes,
tagline
yes,
to have
yes.
out there. And I think that the other thing about it is I think that we were talking about one thing with you, and I think that a lot of people who know you think that a lot of your stuff does lean towards women, but this is one example of where you're not trying to just lean towards women.
Yeah,
This is across the board.
Yes,
with all
yes.
kinds of people.
This is open to men and women, whatever stage of your career. College students, graduate school students. I just want to have a good conversation with people because I am so passionate about leadership.
Yes.
Because it is truly what will take us where we need to go.
Right.
The lack of leadership in whatever you're looking at, when you don't have it, things don't work. Things break down. Things don't happen. But effective leadership can make all the difference in your lives, in your organization, in your school, your church, your nonprofit, in whatever. So I'm very passionate that people have some sense of it. And again, it's not to say my book is the end all be all. It's insights that I have had, things I have found to be effective. We can talk about other things at Baldwin as well.
Yeah, and I think that people have to understand, as I said, this show leans heavily into politics, international, national, and local. But some of the issues today are definitely going to be be fought with by good leadership.
Yes.
There's not going to be any way to combat some of the things that are happening. If you belong to an organization that wants to protest, good leadership will make it a better protest. If you have some particular issues that you want to fight for, Social Security, whatever, those types of things, good leadership will help those issues happen. And in our city, a lot of things that people are concerned about, people are worried about, people feel bad about, crime, be it crime infrastructure, whatever, will be won over by good leadership.
Absolutely, absolutely. One of the chapters is about bringing your A game. And people who know me know I say that all the time. You have to bring your A game in whatever you do. Don't bring the B- game, don't bring the C game, bring the A game in anything. If you go back and even listen to one of my favorite speeches by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., The Street Sweeper.
Yeah.
Where he talks about, and I'm not going to be able to quote it accurately, so I won't, but I'll paraphrase it. What he says is, even if you are a street sweeper, sweep the streets like Michelangelo painted. Be brilliant at it. Don't be okay, be outstanding at it. And you really should be that way in everything that you do. The rise of mediocrity needs to end. It needs to end because as a people, as a society, bringing excellence to the table is what's going to get us where we need to go.
Right, because mediocrity has definitely gotten us where we are now. So it's a definitive answer. And the only thing to combat it is to bring excellence to the table and expect nothing less. I mean, I think what you make very clear in the book, in your talks and everything, is that is not a negotiable. That is something that we must do. We have to do that because we can't be the great nation, great city, great state, whatever we want to be, and individuals without striving
I
for
would
that.
challenge everyone listening to think about when you were in school, be it grammar school or high school in particular, not college so much, but there's some teacher who demanded excellence.
Yes.
Think about that one teacher There's some teacher that crossed your path that demanded everybody, they're like, I'm not just giving you a grade. I want you to do the work. Think about what that teacher saw to pull that from you. That's what we all need to bring every day.
Yes. So lastly, how can people get the book? I know some people will go to Baldwin, some people will do it, but how can somebody get the book who's not going to be able to make it or just wants to hear it because they've heard this?
So the book is The Corporate Playbook. It is available on Amazon. It's available at Barnes and Noble. Yes. And you can buy it online from Baldwin as well. Even if you want to support Baldwin, you can buy it there. You don't necessarily have to
go to Amazon.
But you can do Amazon, Barnes and Noble. There is an ebook, so you can download it for Kindle, where books are sold.
Which is great because then you can carry it around with you. So this has been a great discussion. We're going to have a great weekend ahead of us. Everybody enjoy the weather, enjoy the French Quarter Festival, and thank you so much, Deborah, for being here tonight. Deborah Grant, Corporate Playbook, the book Corporate Playbook. Get it. It will help you in your life no matter what. And if you can, go to the Baldwin event on April 19th. Thank you, and we'll see you next week on the Arnie and Carey Show. Let's Elevate.
WBOK online at WBOK1230.com.